Good evening, or good afternoon. I'm just getting warmed up for tonight. We're here for our work session agenda, Tuesday, February 20th. Our first item on the agenda is Tyler Daugherty with Visit Casper, Glenn Haas, and Vernon Lovejoy regarding the National Heritage Area. Hi, Tyler.
Hello. Wow, that's on. Chairman, Mr. Commissioners, thank you for having me. Sorry. Well, as many times as I've done this, you'd think I got it by now. I do have a correction. I am Luke Gilliam. I'm not nearly as good looking as Tyler, but he is at a work conference in California, so I am here in his stead on behalf of Visit Casper. One, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Pathways National Heritage Area feasibility study with us today. I am here again on behalf of Visit Casper and our board of directors. We are in support of this feasibility study because our history and heritage assets are a key component of the tourism.
Let's have you hang on just a minute. I think Commissioner Milne is trying to join us. Hello.
Hello.
Jim, we just started, so listen in. Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. So Visit Casper is in support of this feasibility study. The history and heritage assets that are going to be discussed today are a key component of our tourism portfolio already, and the enhancement of that could possibly be a big positive for us. So we are in support of this study. The NHA designation could very well be a significant and low-cost strategy to both, one, protect and enhance our county's heritage resources, as well as two, stimulate tourism and economic growth within Natrona County. So we would like to introduce Mr. Vernon Lovejoy and Glenn Haas. They visited with you in June and provided some information, and they're here to provide an update as well as more information and answer any questions.
Hello, gentlemen. Good to see you again. My name's Glenn Hawes. I'll be the MC today. Our time has shrunk a little bit, so we had to do some amendments to our strategy here. We have three guests from outside of Natrona County that we want to get the stage to. So I'd like to introduce Travis Moore. He's County Commissioner from Carbon County to speak to the merits of this idea. Travis, please. Sure.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm well. Good to see you guys. Came from a shorter room just this morning. Vernon approached me a number of years ago talking about this concept, and we had a small gathering, including a lot of folks that had heard about it earlier. I think that ran back all the way to the 80s, something like that, when they pitched this idea a different way. Since that time, there's been a lot more thought about it, and they came and presented to the Carbon County Commissioners. We've had several public forum type discussions there in Rollins, as well as part of the Carbon County Council of Governments, which includes all 10 municipalities and Carbon County. And we, looking at the things just like everybody else, are really, really against federal overreach and a lot of those types of things, especially with many of the Centennial ranches and the things that we have down in Carbon County to protect those assets around where they are. And we came to figure out, after doing a little research and calling out to Colorado, where they have a couple of these national historical areas where the commissioners have given the blessing, and they have yet to find a downside down there in terms of bolstering their heritage tourism. I'm not exactly sure on their numbers. I have no guarantees on those types of things, but they said it was a boost because it's a very targeted group. And once you're on that national registry, it simply just gives a neon sign for people to travel and look at some of our historical heritage type places. For me, as a local guy of Carbon County, born and raised several generations, we do not have the wherewithal to maintain and preserve much of our historical pieces like these. And so many of them are going by the wayside, and this is a way to try to bolster those things for their own protection. The one piece that I do like about this is that this is one piece where the federal government offers local control, how we would see fit after the feasibility study, if in fact it's approved by the Park Service. That's a few steps down the road. This could be governed a few different ways, all of which would be local in partnership between Natrona and Carbon counties. Those are my pieces. All the commissioners of Carbon County signed a letter collectively in support of the feasibility study. Many in the Carbon County Council of Government did much the same. So we came here to present this to you to bolster the whole picture of what this pathways would be, because you're just as much a part of it as we are.
Any questions for the commissioner?
Any questions, commissioners? Commissioner Laird?
Not so much as a question, but thank you for coming down, Mr. Commissioner.
Oh, you bet.
I appreciate when a Wyoming person comes in here and speaks to me about issues. Not that there's anything wrong with Colorado, but I really
Sure.
like to hear from Wyoming people. I know there's some Wyoming people here that will probably speak against this. So it's a little confusing for me, but thank you for coming here. I appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. It's that important to me, looking around some of the things. I mean, Carbon County, we are directly hooked into energy. There's nothing we can do to get around that. We're trying to get into that all of the above energy category. And if this could help us buck that boom and bust type of thing with a lot tamer crowd, in terms of heritage tourism, that would be fantastic. And I'm talking just a couple days on either end on their trip to the park,
Is your entire commission in favor of this? Everybody on the commission?
All but one, and I need to say that with an explanation. The one that's not is brand new. He's a replacement. Commissioner Barkhurst at the time signed on and has since resigned, and his replacement is verbally for it, but has not written his own letter as of yet.
I see. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Joe.
Sure enough.
All right, I'd like to introduce Leslie Jefferson. She's the CEO, equivalent to Visit Casper down in Carbon County of Discover Carbon County.
Thank you, Commissioner Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. We were brought this opportunity from, actually, our Commissioner Moore. He called me personally, asked me if we would attend it. It's been a process. Our board has 10 members. We're a joint powers board. We have 9 board members from specific municipalities and then 1 at-large position. All 10 are for this opportunity. I think what is most important to look at is it's a feasibility study. There's a lot of process to still go through. I do agree with Luke wholeheartedly that it's a way and a chance for us to preserve and protect our assets, as well as cultivate some economic growth with that as well.
Any questions for Leslie?
Thank you very much for coming in.
You're
It's
very-
always nice to hear from people from other counties, because it's a good county. We got a lot of good counties in Wyoming, and it's always like it when people come in and say hello to us and express their opinions. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And I just want to know, I'm excited to be a part of a collaboration between our 2 counties. It would be a great opportunity for the both of us, I believe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And last is John Osling from Hannah, the mayor of Hannah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity, Chairman and County Commissioners.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hannah, as a lot of you know, we're rich in coal. We're not really doing much of that now. And we're a little bit off the beaten path. So over time, what's happened is our town is shrank, seeking for other opportunities to try to bolster revenue, bring people in. We have some hunting and some fishing, but as Travis and I were talking about, we're also fortunately the place of the largest mine accident in the state. And yet, if you went to go try to find that, you would be a little hard pressed if you didn't know someone to sort of point you the way. And that's sort of the way history is in our town. Folks sort of, that's one thing they can get a hold of and grasp and hold on to. They're very passionate about, and that seems to create that single thread that binds the our small community together. In fact, for hours, we'll sit in the pub and talk about, there's very few people that remember the folks that settled and where they settled and what's left. And we feel that this is an opportunity for us to try to enrich that and put some additional context to the history, in a conjunction with the pathway. So appreciate the opportunity to come express that to you guys.
Questions for the
Any
mayor?
Commissioner Moore.
Mr. I do want to reiterate what Commissioner Laird has said, that we do appreciate you guys coming in today. Hearing from Vernon and Glenn, I've heard the spill many times, and they know that. But it's nice to hear from our neighboring county. And there are a lot of things that we need to work together now and do what's best for all of us instead of just one of us looking out for ourselves. So
Well, I mean, you folks probably know you're sort of our big brother. A lot of folks in our community have relatives up here. We consider this our best place to come up and shop, besides having nice restaurants and everything else. So,
yeah. So well, thank you. So
thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Getting a little short on time, but go ahead.
thank you. I really appreciate you coming down. I often wondered who the mayor of Hannah was. I'm glad to meet you. Today, I'm Dallas Laird, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Mr. Laird.
Thanks, Al. Yeah, indeed, we're trying to respect your time, so we're moving fast. Our last speaker is Vernon Lovejoy right here. I might say while he's coming up that there are people in the audience from the Casper Historic Preservation Commission. With lack of time, we're not going to ask them to speak, as well as Rotary folks that came yesterday to hear a presentation, and city officials. So we're not standing here by ourselves. Did you want to pass out that? We have a little handout for you.
Nice to see you again. Commissioner Mill.
Questions maybe, so see what maybe in Natrona County, but what's it going to cost? And are we splitting those costs?
Why don't, Jim, I think we will have maybe a few minutes for questions in a bit, but I think Mr. Lovejoy is going to speak for a couple minutes. So can you hold your question for a minute or two?
Okay, I just wanted to get it out there just in case I had problems with technology.
Great.
I'm kind of the bad guy, the Mutt and Jeff combination here. We want to speak in rebuttal of what Bob Bailey is going to say ahead of time, so you understand where we're coming from. We met Bob in June at Fort Casper, and we gave our very first public meeting there. And I introduced Glenn. I said, "This is Glenn Haas, my partner and my friend." And out of the background comes Bob, and he says, "He's not my friend." So that started it out. And then when Bob finally got to make some comments, the first thing he said was, "I don't want any more tourists in Wyoming. Matter of fact, I don't want any tourists in Wyoming." And then Bob said, Carbon County and Natrona County should not have any cooperation whatsoever on any subject. And he's fully against any type of agreement you might have with Carbon County. This is what he said. There's plenty of people there to heard it, so it wasn't just me.
And then he said he didn't want anybody in, it's a typical, it's something you might hear in Wyoming. I don't want people from Colorado here. We shouldn't be going to Colorado. We need to stop all traffic coming up from the border because we don't want them here. And I think to myself, so you don't want any airport coming, any airport services, you don't want any delivery of goods and services, you don't want a lot of things from Colorado. No. And then the big subject came up about the U.S. government out of Wyoming. So if you really take that full circle, see, once the parks closed, monuments closed, national recreation areas closed, Devil's Tower, Yellowstone, so on, wildlife closed, wildlife refuges closed. Once the BLM out, which means, I guess the BLM says we can't manage our lands, then there's no grazing, there's no new mineral leases. You want the Bureau of Reclamation out, well, that means, are they going to deliver, nobody's going to deliver water to the farmers, irrigation water? And then there's no money for roads, no money for hospitals, no money for schools, no money for airports, no money for the military. And so there's a lot of negative things associated with just say, I want the government out of Wyoming, the U.S. government, I hate them, I want them out of Wyoming. I'm thinking, does he want to take down the U.S. flag too? And do you want to use the U.S. currency? And I don't know the answers to that. Do we take the strategic oil reserve out? It's a U.S. government thing. And then the big thing I noticed was if you don't want anybody or anything coming in from Colorado, then Wyoming is not self-sufficient in food. Then you run out of food really, really quick. This is all drastic, hypothetical stuff, but it goes to show the nature of the comments that he's making because he's very antagonistic talking to us. He never knew us. And then he throws the final curve that says, yeah, you guys are some hidden agenda. You guys are in this for the money. There's something there, and you're just not telling us what it is. And he's been over and over and over preaching that same little thing and trying to change the topic of national recreation areas and the benefit. Glenn and I are benefiting some financial way from this thing. We're not. We like to do this sort of thing because it's challenging, it's fun for us, and that's what we've been doing all of our lives is promoting parks, recreation, and tourism. And so when Bob gets up there, I want him to put in his big boy pants and address all these issues about getting out of nothing out of Colorado, nothing from the U.S. government, why he doesn't want any tourists, and the list goes on. So if you'd like any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Lovejoy? Thank you. Mr. Haas?
Back to the question.
Well, before that,
Oh.
and before Commissioner Milne's question, would you just be clear with us today? I've read through your submission, but would you be clear with us today what you're asking for, what you're asking Natrona County commissioners for?
A thumbs up on a feasibility study and an appointment of one of the commissioners as a point of contact for the study. Those two things.
And I've seen the proposed language of a resolution. And so my understanding is you're not asking us for the $7,500 at this time because you're changing your strategy a little bit.
Right. One of the things that Vernon didn't get to say is that we built this website, Pathways, that anyone can go to. That's going to be the vehicle by which we deliver information. We'll still have open houses like we met with the Rotary yesterday. Other meetings are being talked about. The ladies of the Republican Party talked to us last night. So yes, there'll be open houses, but this other vehicle will save a lot of time and effort and $500 a trip and so on and so forth. There's no cost. We're withdrawing that $750 or $7,500 request from both parties.
The big expense was coming back and forth and doing open houses all over the place, and that wasn't going to happen. But this has worked out pretty good. And by the way, so as of yesterday, we had 207 people who had cast a ballot. 96% of them in favor of this project, which is pretty overwhelming if you think about it. The last thing is
Where were those folks from?
pardon me?
Was that an online survey or was
Yeah,
that?
it's, if you go to the website,
Okay.
go to our website and just scroll down, you'll see it. You'll get a chance to comment, chance to vote, and read and understand all the art, documents and articles and things, other things we provided in that website.
We haven't really launched it because this feasibility study hasn't been launched. So we have not done any work since last June when we met with you folks. So we're hoping to get the ball rolling one way or another. You can say no, we'll go about and do our thing. But we'd like, as volunteers, we'd like to feel as though there's some support for this idea. At least intrigue and curiosity about what a feasibility study might tell you.
So one question I had was the feasibility study was going to get us a 90% work product.
Got it.
Approximately, what's that additional 10% going to cost the county or the counties?
And it could cost a number of other parties like
Fair enough.
Visit Casper and so on and so forth. We will give you a finished 90% product, but it's not ready to be submitted to the Park Service or certainly not to Congress. It needs to be dressed up, needs the final editing, layout, photos, that kind of design work, so it looks good.
Sure.
And I think that's probably $10,000-$15,000 of a cost to finish that up.
Total, not per county.
Not a cost to, not a cost that we're going to charge.
No, we're not going to do that.
That's not we're not charging any cost for anything we do.
We'll hand it over to you folks. You could decide whether you want to submit it or not. If you decide you don't want to submit it, then there's no cost. If you decide you want to submit it in conjunction with Travis and the commissioners, then you would negotiate some deal, maybe invite other parties in. And maybe you have some in-house skill sets to do the layout and design of photography and photo covers and so on and so forth.
That's where the cost comes in, administrative stuff.
Great. Any last questions? Thanks
I
for
got-
the presentation and thank you for bringing the folks you brought in. Go ahead, Mr. Lovejoy.
So the handout you got, there's two competing things on there. One is this came out of the Wyoming File, the big article was in Wyoming File. If you didn't see it, I don't know whether you keep up with Wyoming File. That was a feature story on the National Heritage Area, proposed National Heritage. So there's two competing letters in there, two opposite views. One of them's from Bob Bailey, and the other one is from Millward Simpson. Now, Millward, for those of you who know him or don't know him, Millward is Senator Simpson's grandson. Pete Simpson is his dad. Millward was, for 4 years, director of the Wyoming State Parks, Historic Sites, Trails, and so on. He had SHPO underneath him. He had the Historic Commission. He had all these state museums, the whole work. So if there's anybody ever provided a comment, I would say Millward is probably more qualified than anybody in this room and probably more qualified than just about anybody you could possibly find. If you notice his short little paragraph or two, which is the last page there, you will see that he overwhelmingly supports the project. He agrees with everything that was in the Pathways website. So if you're looking for another dedicated Wyoming person, that's him.
Thank you.
I do have one short question, Mr. Chairman.
We need to wrap it up.
What do you suppose this is going to cost us if it gets approved?
I believe that the first year budget, we have a 5-year budget. We're happy to show it to you right now, frankly. It hasn't been vetted with any of our friends. But the first year budget's $100,000, $50,000 in kind. Soon as this designation goes through, Wyoming state maps will get changed. The Wyoming travel tourism catalog will get changed. All our Visit Casper documents will start to embellish this notion of national distinction. National Park Service will be coming out with maps that show this area. That's all free advertising. We estimate that to be
But I'm
$50,000.
wondering what
a
it's
year.
gonna potential cost it is for Natrona County.
I'd like to see you have some skin in the game, $5,000 or $10,000.
And by the way, speaking of National Park Service, they said if once the two counties are officially on board, that they will provide a representative for you guys to talk to, that you can ask questions. We'll sit here and respond to you, which might be very beneficial.
And Commissioner Laird, the decision about the budget will be your decision. We're just trying to put things down in writing that makes sense. There's things like the budget and the organization that would manage this thing, which will be your decision as well as the Casper City, or the commissioner's decision. So
Yeah.
again, we're just going to try to keep this. And might I say, there's a match from the Park Service, $150,000 for the first 3 years. Some people say, don't touch Park Service money. Fine, stay out of it. Don't do the match. I think it's crazy, but don't do it. But you could do the match. You raise $100,000 through various in-kind contributions of marketing and promotion. You can match that with Park Service money. Be able to hire someone to build that app, so important to information flow for people, heritage tourists. This is a very low-cost project with tremendous economic potential.
Thank you both. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, gentlemen.
And you'll stick around in case we have any follow-up questions for you
Next hour or so? Yeah.
in the next few minutes.
Yeah.
Mr. Bailey?
Mr. Commissioner,
Hello.
like my name and address, et cetera.
Just your name.
Robert Bailey, 2800 Arden Lane, Casper, Wyoming. In light of the time frame that I've been given, I've cut my talk back. I have some details that you might be interested in. I have elected to address the email that came to you, to the board, in regards to my YO file post back in August 31st of 23. I have it here if you'd like to read it. None of the things that they've talked about is contained in that. I think these guys, I really irritated them. They haven't answered any of my questions yet. The email deals with my WIO file article and raised the same questions that I've been attempting to obtain the answers for from that time. Number one, I was not saying anything about property rights, which they addressed in their response to you in their email. And that email was August 21st of 23. The YO file article, my comments were virtually the same as I brought up in the initial meeting with this group with the Natrona County Historical Preservation Commission. My comments were, why are people from Colorado so concerned about Wyoming and want to help us? I think we can do a lot of this stuff ourselves. And what economic benefit is there to them and their company? They filed a Colorado LLC, which protects them from any liability on this issue. I find that there was, I find that there were no, and this is a quote, disparaging personal remarks, which he alleged that I said, nor any deranged conspiracy comments and personal affronts. Those are exact quotes from his email. And I can read you my YO file. There was about as many people agreed with me on YO file as agreed with Simpson. As far as property rights go, it is my understanding that if a person has land in the pathways area, which we're talking about all of Natrona County, and we'll only address that here because that's just you guys, and does not want to participate in this program, they must opt out as opposed to having the choice to opting in. An opt-out is an action that you would have to take, and I'm going to guess that not everybody in the county is going to be real pleased with this, especially the ranchers, which will have, let's just say, people wandering, or the ability for people to wander about their property. As stated in the email, recent laws establishing the National Heritage Area have contained provisions intended to address concerns about potential loss of or restrictions on use of private property. That sort of lends me to believe that there's a hole in this act that might give the feds some ability to be in there because they've addressed it later on. This act is 40 years old. Wyoming has apparently chosen not to participate and ignore it for 40 years. I wonder if there's been any effort to contact the landowners, and especially the ranchers. This is where it's going to be, out in the ranch lands, the prairie country, where they're going to have people coming onto their ranch, possibly or only maybe on public roads, etc. But the question remains, the issue right now is corner crossing. And I believe that's an issue down in Albany County that has started down there on a rancher trying to keep people off of their ranch and their properties. And the court in that case, and I believe it's only a district court case right now, but I think they're still fighting over it down there, is corner jumping. Now, if you think about that, I don't think personally that you can cross at a corner. I've got to trespass at some point on your property if you own, and you know what I'm talking about, corner crossings, where you own property that only touches your property, and there'd be federal property on both sides. When I jump across that point, and how big is that point? Let's say it's the size of a survey cap, okay? I can't get across there. My belly's going to trespass on somebody because you own up and you own down. So I think there's something that's going to happen with that. It's going to have to be addressed, because I could come onto your ranch, find a piece of federal ground, and find a corner crossing somewhere, and all of a sudden I'm deeper into your property. So I think this thing is really all about access. They mentioned a survey that they did, and I'll correct them. They said in their email, 87.5% of the people who responded to their survey were favorable. I don't know who those people were. Maybe they were all from Colorado. They don't tell us what percentage of the people were from Wyoming that answered that survey. That's something that statistically you've got to know to be able to put these numbers out there. I am a lifelong resident of Wyoming and Natrona County and Casper. I've attended 3 meetings of this group. In the first meeting, the dollar figure was $70,000 to do this report. I believe it was 70 or 80. The second meeting was zero, and the third was zero with $25,000 for expenses. I get today, again, we're back to zero, but we're talking expenses. Commissioner Laird brought that up. Where they begin and where they've ended up changing this, I believe that they have to circle back and start the process again. When you change the plan, it's like subdividing. When you subdivide a piece of land and then you come and say, well, I'm going to change the lot sizes, you've got to circle back through the whole process again to redo it. So I'm saying that these guys have to start over again at the beginning, which I would say that would be the Natrona County Historical Preservation Commission, and begin again. There was no recommendation given on this project by the Historical Preservation Commission of Natrona County. The company's plans for a national pathways covers 13.6% of the total of Wyoming's land. If you look at the maps of these projects across the various states, they're mostly back east. And of course, they have a lot of history back there with the Revolutionary Wars and those types of things, which we don't really have. 13.6% of Wyoming is a huge amount of land. It covers 16.42% of Wyoming's population. I wonder if there's been any notice given to those people that it's going to affect. That would be me and you and the ranchers and all. I know people, and I spoke recently with a rancher out around Leo. No idea that this is happening. If you read the act, and I haven't read it all to digest the whole thing, it was passed in '84, and since that time, it appears Wyoming has chosen not to participate. I believe that the state, if it had wanted this type of area, could use their own resources or our own resources to do this. We have the University of Wyoming. We have local boards and organizations that could probably handle this matter. I would recommend that one read the act carefully and watch for certain trigger words that would let the feds into more active management under its terms. I have not said I don't want tourism. I have not said that I don't want to cooperate with Carbon County. I have said, I wonder why Colorado is so anxious to help us. I haven't said to keep the USA out of Wyoming and stop all of that stuff. Here's one of the trigger things that I've looked at in this act. There were 10 criteria for evaluation of candidate areas for the National Park Service. Congress and the public, quote, there are serious questions in this area if this area would qualify for the designation. Reading in part, quote, to conserve natural, cultural, historic, and or scenic features. Does that sound like the feds are out of this deal? It doesn't to me. Outstanding, quoting again, outstanding recreational and educational opportunities. And quote, the proposed management entity and units of government supporting the designation are willing to commit to work in partnership to develop the heritage area. Now, those things don't sound to me like the federal government is going to stay out of this deal at all. I have had some serious questions that haven't been answered yet. The group pushing this pathway area consists of individuals from Colorado, and from what I can ascertain, a couple of Colorado LLCs. The consulting company these gentlemen are associated with or all or part of them, or a majority of them, when I look on their website and see who is involved, are all prior federal employees. Why is this group involved from Colorado so interested in tourism in Wyoming? It says in their email that Vernon, I believe it was Vernon had married a lady from Rawlins. He lived there 12 years. Okay? I wouldn't call that a long-standing relationship with the state. I see commissioners in front of me that have been here many, many years, more than that.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
let me give you another 2 minutes and then we
Okay,
need to
I'm
move on
sorry.
to our next items. No, it's fine.
I tried to cut this down. I'm going a little deeper than I had planned on this to begin with here a little bit. Glenn Hawes receives over $7 million annually from selling pizza in Fort Collins. I'm at a total loss as to why these guys are wanting to help us. I mean, Colorado has done things with marijuana laws and have turned that place into a mess. There's a couple of destinations, I think, if you look at Wyoming's tourism, and I'll speak to it and then I'll be done if that works for you. If you look at the 16 top destinations for Wyoming, okay, one of them is in this area, and that's the National Historic Trail Center. The rest of them are basically Jackson and the park, Cody to Jackson area. Some ski areas, some stuff around Devil's Tower and that type of stuff. Here's an interesting fact that I've found out about Wyoming's. This was in, I believe, 2021, and that was the most recent I could find. Wyoming's total GDP was $42.6 billion. Okay. Leisure and hospitality was number 10 on the list. And that was 4.6%. Included in that leisure and hospitality was tourism at 3.7%. We could double that if we could,
Mr. Bailey,
and would move it up to about sixth.
I just wanted to give the other commissioners, before we wrap it up with you, a chance to ask you any questions.
I'd be happy to take any questions that they have.
I have one question, Mr. Chairman. Should be pretty easy for Mr. Bailey to answer. Can you do that? I want you to do it in one sentence if you can.
You know me better
What
than
is
that.
the worst thing that could happen to us if we do this?
Access. I'll answer it in one word.
To
Land.
ranching communities, you mean?
Basically, the ranching community, yeah.
All right, I wondered what was,
Yeah, in town, what are you going to do? You're going to go from historic trails to the Fort Casper. If you,
it was a one sentence answer. I got it.
I gave you
You
one
were
word.
perfect. You were perfect in the answer. Thank you for that.
Mr. Bailey, thank you very much. We appreciate your time today as well. Commissioner Moore, I have a question for you. After Mr. Bailey,
Are you done with me? Any
I
other
think we're-
questions? I'd be
May I ask-
happy to.
uh,
I have more,
Make a
let me
quick statement.
make one
Thanks.
statement. I have more detailed information.
Thanks
on
for
what
coming,
I
Mr.
said.
Bailey. I appreciate it.
Short statement.
Commissioner North.
Yes.
Mr. Bailey, I just want to let you know that the first time that this was brought up to us,
Mhm.
some of the maps were totally different than they are now.
Right?
They've been changed.
They have.
They are no longer taking them through areas where you have a lot of ranching access and stuff like that, because that was one of my concerns too at the time. And that's something that has been changed to correct a lot of that.
Is that the map that they ended up with?
Mhm.
It goes to northern Natrona County, and it goes to Colorado. That covers a lot of ranches that I know of.
But the areas that
They haven't carved any of those areas out yet. So as a rancher, you have to be positive or do something to opt out of your land.
So,
Now, if they carved that back and carved out, if you draw a line
Mr. Bailey,
across the national,
but
the
yeah,
Oregon
Mr.
Trail.
Bailey, I just wanted to let you know that was part of my concerns at first too. So,
I
really
think they're still
I-
there.
I-
If you look at the ranch, if you look at the lands.
all right. I had a question for Commissioner Moore. Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Bailey.
you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Com- Commissioner Moore? Has your commission engaged with the ag ranching community in your county? And are they generally in favor or opposed to this?
Minus all the ones that are on the commission. I'm kidding.
Fair enough.
I'm the only one that's not ranching based. But yes, the original meeting that took place in Carbon County at the Higher Education Center had others that were involved that have since been honored with Centennial Ranches that go north of Rollins and south of Rollins for guiding, hunting, all the other pieces and parts. And in the best estimation coming from our side of things is that this would run the same access problems as Google Maps when they close the roads because of the snow. We still haven't figured that out. I don't know if you guys have, or we'll take any tips you have.
no, we had the same problems.
Send the Prius down the county road. That's always a good idea. But that's all I have for that.
Okay. I think that's it.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a comment to you.
Commissioner, yes.
The thing that concerns me the most that I've heard that I don't like is that you have to opt out. I've never liked that. I think that is hold it. I don't like that if that's true, because it creates disruption and it preys upon people who just aren't paying close attention. They say, well, you've waived it.
Mr. Haas, do you want to respond to that now?
Yeah, two things. The study has not started yet, and over time, things, maps, ideas, resolutions will change as our team work on resolution. Opt-in is the way to go for sure. I guarantee it. Opt-out is too laborious, it's too burdensome. I don't know where the opt-out came from, Mr. Bailey or whoever,
All right.
but that's not true.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Commissioners, I would suggest we have three options. We're not going to take any action now, but at a meeting, we could make a motion to resolve to move forward with the feasibility study. We've been presented with a couple sentences that might form the basis of a resolution. I think we ought to take a quick look at that, make sure legal doesn't have any concerns with it. We could elect not to move forward and make a motion to that effect, or we could do nothing and punt. So we could act as quickly as tonight if the commission were so inclined. Commissioner Laird?
Another thing I didn't quite get the information on, maybe they can provide it. I don't see anything wrong with the feasibility study as long as it isn't binding on us or anyone else. I like feasibility studies conducted by the right people. It gives me more information. But if it becomes binding in some way, and then they have their hand out for money that I haven't been really told about, I wouldn't really like that proposition.
My understanding, Commissioner Laird, is that the feasibility study is essentially turned over to us and we can do with it what we wish. We can further engage, we can move forward, we can throw it in the trash. Not that we do that, but I think we have that optionality. Is that correct, Mr. Haas?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you all. We're going to move on to actually, we're going to have our deputy county attorney moved to 3:30 right before our round table. And now we're going to have PMCH come up and visit with us about an update and review of the financial compliance report.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank
Thank you,
you all.
folks from Carbon. Take care. Travel safe.
Good day.
Tell everybody in Hannah I said hello.
I will. Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Okay. Hi, Ms. Wilkinson. How are you?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman,
Nice to see you.
members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here again, and we certainly appreciate to be the county's auditors for many, many years. We have completed the county's audit for the fiscal year June 30th, 2023. I would believe that all of you are in receipt of our report, our communication to those in charge with governance, which kind of outlines our responsibilities, as well as I think the management letters have been drafted, right?
Correct. Those went out this morning, I believe.
Yes.
And they have copies.
So I think sometimes I'd like to point to one of the pages. It's kind of in the back, but it's page 126 of the report that is a schedule of findings and question costs. So that is sort of like a report card. It discusses the type of report we issued. So we issued an unmodified opinion, which
Can I
is,
interrupt you?
yes, certainly.
I'm having a little bit of a hard time. All you need to do is direct that microphone this way.
Okay.
That's better.
That's better?
And then same when you're
Okay,
visiting.
we'll move this.
Great.
Should I repeat or?
No, just
you're
go
good.
ahead from
Okay.
there.
So on the schedule of findings and question cost, there is a summary of auditor's results, which discusses the financial statements and federal awards. So we issued an unmodified opinion. We did not have any any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the financial reporting, or also non-compliance. Now, as far as federal awards, we audited 3 programs this year, and we actually ended up having three findings. There was a material weakness and significant deficiency. All the programs that we audited were in CAP programs. They have responded. We've met with them and discussed all the findings. There were changeovers in management, and I think some of that has occurred due to that. Few things going back to the financial statements. I think I would like to mention that this is now the 3rd year in a row that the county adopted a new GASB. First, it was GASB 84 fiduciary changes in fiduciary funds. That was GASB 84. That was 3 years ago. Now, the year before was leases, GASB 87, and now in fiscal 2023 was GASB 96, which sort of was in conjunction with the leases, but it was the subscriptions, and the county did adopt and recorded some additional right to use assets. Essentially, what that is that if their entity has licenses and that relates to software, then and there is really a non-cancelable agreement, then those are recorded as right to use asset. And this is kind of a change that is happening all around, that, a lot of the software is on a subscription basis. So there is a right to use asset and a liability, and I think Seth maybe can mention a little bit more after that, but let me just, so that was just every year. Next year, we have another standard to implement, so I think that our standard setters are getting pretty busy with every year something new. One of the, the things that I may want to point out is that sort of a few years ago, our legislature adopted SF 60, which had to do with changes with how the property taxes are collected, and commissioners, of course, are aware of that. So now, from perspective of financial statement reporting, all the estimated payments that are remitted by the producers, because the levy, for example, a levy that was just in fiscal 24, it was a levy of in August of 23, that mineral taxes are based on production in 2022. So at the end of almost now, end of each fiscal year, there will be unearned revenue for about 18 months. So if you were to look at page 19, the county had $7.5 million in unearned revenue. So every year that will be recognized once the levy actually is set. So I think about 18 months. That's kind of a big difference. It requires quite a bit of accounting. And I'm sure as commissioners are aware, there were some issues with that certain producers reported in an incorrect tax district. That ends up being kind of a problematic. So that's been sort of a difficult thing to manage for a lot of the governmental entities, and clearly the county has, the county personnel and the treasurer's office understands that, and we've received all the appropriate information in regards to that. So, but that's kind of a new thing, and there's a lot of questions around that. I will pass on to Seth. He may want to mention about the subscription, GASB 96, the subscription software.
Yeah. I think there we go. Yeah, I'll go over the subscription software really fast, and then I can talk about the management comment letters as well, because there's capital asset discussion in there. Alexander kind of gave the quick lowdown there on that new standard with that subscription asset. If you're familiar with the speech we gave last year with the leases, there's just a bigger push to get some of these assets and liabilities that are newer, I guess, not traditional in terms of like a subscription item versus like a physical asset. And so with this new standard, that subscription asset came on. The way that's measured is you just look at the kind of the value of that agreement. If you have a 3 to 5 year long-term agreement, you do a present value calculation to kind of get to the current value of that agreement. And that's the subscription asset that lands on the asset books. And then that's also just the liability that lands as it's paid over the multiple years, that'll decrease. So that's the subscription asset with the new standard. I was going to kind of just roll with that into this management comment letter that we had, just because that pertains specifically to the capital asset additions. You'll see in here, and this is the same for the fair, as it details in this comment, kind of the challenge of the county in Nick's shoes as the finance manager is to accumulate that asset purchases through the year. So as there's these multiple departments around doing purchases like road and bridge or planning different departments, he's kind of tasked to try and get that together at the end of the year for us for audit purposes to get that complete asset listing. So as you can see in here, it kind of details, we identified, I believe it was in the road and bridge, there was a big construction project that Road and Bridge hadn't quite put in that inventory change form, kind of to alert Nick about that new asset that's being built to get that on our asset listing. So that's what that pertains to. And then similarly with the fair, they had a new barn, I believe, that there was added, and we had identified that in the audit. So that's what that pertains to. So any questions on that or?
Not on that.
Okay. Back to you then.
Sure. One of the things I think I would like to also mention is that, as the commissioners know, that the responsibility for preparation of financial statements lays on the entity. So the county keeps all of their books on cash basis, essentially. So the other staff prepare a lot of schedules that we end up auditing. So preparing the financial statements, is kind of a twofold. We audit everything on cash basis. We also audit the information that we receive to post all the accrual statements. So it takes quite a bit of time. So and I think we haven't had any issues, and we really appreciate all the work that has been done by all the departments because it does take quite a bit.
And I might add to that, we don't have Brian with us here today. He wasn't able to attend, and a big thanks to all the county's departments, Tracy and Nick, for all that work they put in for something like this, all these miscellaneous schedules that get put together at the end of the year for the audit. Big thanks to them for all that work.
So on that, I hear from what I'm hearing, our county departments are getting you the information you need in a timely manner and everything you need to render your opinions, review and render your opinions. How do we stack up with some of your other clients? Are we or do we get an A or do we get more of like a C?
I don't know if we've graded them, but I mean, I would say a benefit to you guys having like a Nick, having like a county finance manager. Some of your smaller counties don't always have that personnel available. They're don't have that extra help like that central man that we can go to for him, and he kind of helps us as we navigate through the departments and the requests from them. I was just on the phone with him this morning and explaining to him how that is a challenge. So I would probably say, yeah, put you guys in an A bucket because of that, having that resource, you know. So.
Yes, I mean, I think it is really important to have someone like Nick, who is a CPA, who understands what's required to put the financial statements together. And I think it's also extra difficult for a county that is a lot more fragmented. That, let's say, if you take a governmental entity that has just, that's a school district. School district has a business manager, and everybody kind of reports to, everything kind of falls into one umbrella. And the county is a little more complicated because you have a lot of elected officials. There's a little bit of a different. It's one process, but there are some fragmented processes that sort of need to be looked at and make a determination, well, there is a risk here, there isn't a risk there, and what has to be kind of provided, and especially with all the constant changing standards and things like that. So, yes.
So we appreciate Nick's efforts and Tom, our treasurer's efforts, and recognize the talent there. Do you work for other counties?
Yes.
Do any of those other counties have county managers or county administrators?
Some do, some don't.
I would think that you would deal significantly with the county administrator or county manager in those other cases.
Yes.
How would having a county administrator or manager change things for this county? Just let me throw out a general question like that.
Am I understanding this correctly? When you're asking county manager, when you're saying like a role like Nick, are you asking about something separate from his role? Is that what you're asking?
Correct.
Okay. And I don't know that we would correct in saying that another county has a county manager in that term. Other ones have someone like Nick in his shoes, but they wouldn't have like an official county manager to oversee it all. I'm not aware of one. Are you?
I know Campbell County does.
Campbell, okay.
I didn't know and don't need to know if that's a client, but in any case, my thinking is that checks and balances that's important for your firm in kind of reviewing how we're conducting our business. I didn't know if there were other situations that your firm engages with a county manager or county administrator, how that comes into play in terms of your audit and your work for those counties. So doesn't sound like you can really speak to that.
Not specifically. I would say there's ones where we have like a Nick role and so then they do have that central role, because the ones that don't have like a finance manager or even someone to help just with that audit process, you do find us as staff going to multiple different departments just to get everything put together into one bucket for us to start even auditing. Whereas Nick kind of fills that role. He kind of starts funneling that into one piece. I think the hurdle you would be looking at, and then you would have to get into the legal standpoint.
Sure.
We hear this a lot with counties, is because all these different offices are elected officials. There would be legal hurdles, I feel like, to get over to even have that county manager have much authority or power over them. So, right?
I think that's kind of what we've heard. I mean, I think that from our perspective, we try to always when we discuss with the counties that if there is an individual who can sort of pull everything together, because it is very difficult for us to go to every single department, get all the information, so usually there is someone on either the treasurer's office that's sort of taking that responsibility, or maybe at the clerk's office taking that responsibility, or someone who is working for one of the other departments. But because of the elected officials, sometimes it does end up being a little problematic, how things are handled. But from our perspective, we just usually don't, at least have not seen that if you're referring to a manager, like a county manager, that is able to essentially oversee what every single department does. From what we are experiencing, we're trying to ask that there is one individual that at least puts all the information together, that it's able to communicate to some degree for us so they are gathering the information, they are reviewing it. If something is wrong, they can maybe go back to that particular department, or and provide the information, that if there is specific, for example, for pension, if there is other post-employment benefits that are very complicated, there needs to be an actuarial reports and things like that. But we have not, at least I have not seen that there is actually a business manager that is overseeing all of the departments, and they kind of respond to that particular individual.
Mr. Chairman. I'm a person that thinks we should have a county manager, but I don't mean to say that we have one that oversees other elected officials.
Oh.
The kind of county manager that I perceive as one that actually might be similar to the city manager, who then reports to the city council, but one who manages our department heads, non-elected officials.
Okay.
We have great elected officials, so we're not seeking to have anybody appointed to control them. They do a good job, and they're elected by the people, and that's the way I want to leave it. So a county manager to me is someone who it reports to us, who's here on a daily basis. We're part-time, and we're not in the building, as much as, of course, a full-time person would be. So my theory for a county manager is something different than I think what you were thinking about. But let me ask this question. Does the county have any serious problems that you saw in your audit?
I think the ones that, obviously what we include in our report there is kind of what we would elevate to serious, right? And so that's got different levels. You've got those findings that are included in the report, those compliance related findings around the federal awards. And then you get to this management comment letter. So if you were going to break down findings in an audit report, you would start with financial statement findings, and then with a single audit, these are federal award findings. And the more serious of those two would be material weaknesses and significant deficiencies, essentially saying that you're going to have a risk of there being a materially wrong number based on processes or testing that we've done. And then from there, if we might identify things that we could say, hey, this could use correction, this could use some more attention. That's where we could get to like this management comment letter that we have, like this items for like capital assets. We're saying, hey, the things we identified weren't considered material, right? They weren't major, but maybe something to pay a little closer attention to. So does that make sense?
Do you see it that we have any problems concerning the handling of cash? Have you looked into that at all?
Well, we always look into cash and reconciliations over cash and how cash is handled. So we certainly do.
Is there a way of running this county without cash, without accepting cash from people, but rather another method? In your opinion. I'm asking.
A different way to
I'm asking them. You gotta let them answer.
to handle without handling cash at all?
Well, I think you always need cash,
definition of cash?
but there are, I think there are a little few problems with cash. And I don't know how to solve it. I guess one of the things that I had in mind was this county manager sort of guy or woman, whoever may be doing the job, but that's another conversation.
So the audit is to review the financial statements and render an opinion whether the the balances are fairly stated, in all material respects. So we do consider internal control. We do consider the risk. We do things, various, and then we kind of design our test based on that. So certain, cash collections, we have looked overall, yet, but I can't really answer that. I think specifically what the commissioner is asking now. Definition of, that we were talking about findings, significant deficiencies and material weaknesses. So material weakness is from the audit perspective, is that whether individuals who are in the process of doing the work, there is going to be a significant error that they are not going to be able to discover, and then the ending result is going to be significant. That's kind of, I can read the definition, but that's kind of what it is. So I think that there could be some potential errors, but they may not be significant.
Thank you.
I think along that line too, and if you were looking at the final communication letter, there's going to be communication of that significant risks that we identify. So those common ones, they're standard ones that our standards require us to assess in terms of significant risks. The big one is what they call management override. So essentially, if you have someone with a little bit too much involvement in different processes, we have to consider that a significant risk and plan our audit procedures appropriately. The other one is revenue recognition. That's just a standard required risk. So how do entities recognize revenue? Because revenue drives a lot of decision making. And then interestingly enough on that topic, the last one that we generally include in our counties because of the desegregation is what we call desegregated cash collections, because you do have that risk of cash being collected in multiple different locations. And around that, from the audit procedures, we do gain an understanding of the internal controls that exist for that collection. So we consider, and then the dollar value of the collections that happen. So we can consider the risk there of if cash was being misappropriated.
So basically what you're saying is you've looked at our internal controls,
Right.
our practices and procedures, and they're acceptable. They meet with the professional standards that are applicable to the county.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions, or did you have anything else for us?
I don't think so.
Well, how many years have you been engaged by the county to do this?
Quite a few years.
Well, thank you for putting up with us, putting up with Nick especially. No, in all seriousness, thanks for your hard work. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Now we have Fly Casper Alliance. I see Casey. And Glenn, welcome. And Justin's back there in case they need more ammo.
Right.
I'm the muscle.
Thanks for having us today.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate you being here. We're aware that the Q1 and Q2 of 2024 MRG, that hasn't been approved by the county at this point. I think that my hope was to have a kind of a roundtable discussion amongst us. We did see in general a number that was somewhere, I think the county share was, Casey, do you have that number off the top of your head? Is 600 and something for 2 quarters?
Yes, that would be right. It was a little over $1 million total, and then the 60% of that is, I think it was 800 and something. I can calculate that. Hold on.
Well, we'll look at that number here in a minute. Casey, you and I think you and others have been engaged in conversations with members of the business community, with maybe you can just give us a little bit of an update on some of those conversations you've had, because I think last time we met, we talked about the hope and desire to bring in some additional ammunition or financial contribution. Right now, it's a 40-60 split with the state aeronautical division. They're 40, we're 60. So tell us about the conversations you've had since last we visited with you.
So, yeah, the city, I think, is interested in doing something. I've had conversations with them. They aren't going to meet until April. I did ask them for $200,000. I know that you've talked to a number of people in Converse County, and we're sort of getting some mixed comments there. Aside from that, I haven't had a lot of conversations with other groups that are wanting to participate in this. I've had a lot of conversations with people who believe that it's really important for the ongoing development of Casper to continue with this flight, especially right now while we've got a lot of things in the works like the shooting range and RARA in particular. And people just really feel it's necessary. And I've done a community study where it wasn't really focused at any specific group of individuals. And the responses overwhelmingly from people on that question were that we needed to keep this flight, and it would be devastating for Casper to lose their direct connection to Salt Lake City.
Commissioner North.
I'm not going to be very nice. 2 years ago, when this was developed, we were told, the commission was told, that the Flycasper Alliance was going to be developed so that this didn't have to keep coming back to the commission asking them for money every year. I don't know if you remember that or not, Glenn, but that's what it was. That's what we were told. Our last invoice was $464,000. So if you look at $464,000, just the county share of that is going to be over $1 million. We can't keep sustaining this. I'm not disagreeing that the flight is valuable to our community, but what I do disagree with is the county should not be the one that bears the burden of this. We shouldn't be having to keep ponying up when we're not necessarily the ones that are getting the full benefit of this. I'm not disagreeing that this is good for the county. What I'm disagreeing with is who's having to pay for it. And that's been my concern the whole time. There's a lot of other things that we have that we're obligated to take care of. And this takes away from that money that we're obligated to cover. So, I mean, I'm willing to listen, but right now, I haven't seen what we were told that we were going to get a couple of years ago, and I'm just not seeing that follow through. I know, Glenn, that you have been working on other airlines. I know you've been working on different things like that, but we haven't seen any fruition come through on that either. So, I don't want to be mean and nasty, but I'm just saying this is the way I look at it. I'm kind of a facts guy. I look at it and say this is where we're at. This is what we were told, and this is where the financial reliability is and sustainability. And I just cannot see that continuing to happen. So,
Yeah, I echo some of Commissioner North's comments in that I recognize that this is, that the Delta flight in particular operated on the at-risk basis with SkyWest, which is structurally, as we know, different than the SkyWest United structure and flight. We want to support you, Glenn. We think you're the best. We think that this airport is incredibly important to, I think, all of Wyoming, certainly central Wyoming, and absolutely the county. So we'll continue to support you and your efforts, and we've talked about the control tower, we've talked about other things, and we'll do what we can. The benefit here is to the county generally, but specifically, I think there's a feeling amongst some of the commissioners that there's far more economic benefit to the city of Casper, maybe the other towns and municipality, and certainly to the business community. And so while we want to support an airport and want to support Glenn, you and your people, we're feeling perhaps, and I shouldn't say we, I'm feeling a little abused. I appreciate the state's contribution at that 40% level. I'd like to see it swap to a 60-40 instead of a 40-60. But it's almost like we're taken for granted that the county will do this. You mentioned $200,000 from the city. We'll take any amount, but that doesn't seem to me at this point to be a fair reflection of the benefit that it receives and businesses within the city limits that they receive. And so while we are charged with and will continue to help operate an airport under Glenn, your tutelage, we still, I think, need some economic, financial dollars help from others out there, whether it's the business community and or the city of Casper, Evansville, Mills, bar none. So I don't know if you can speak to that. You're getting kind of lectured here, but I think you need to be aware that there's a real concern.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner North, maybe I can address the commissioner's question first, and then Casey can answer the question in terms, or maybe some more about the other entities. I think when the FlyCasper Alliance was initially formed, it was, I don't believe it was so that the county, and I don't think we presented this or meant to present this way, that the county would not have a financial role going forward. It was to create an entity where donations or contributions could be made, whether it's other municipalities or whether it's the business community, that FlyCasper Alliance would take the role, not necessarily supplant what the county would be doing from a funding standpoint. Certainly when we started off with the MRG with the first request, at least I'll talk from my perspective, I've never approached the commissioners to tell you something I think you wanted to hear. We've tried to be very careful in this is what we're looking for and this is the reason why. The first MRG was based upon higher fuel costs. That was what was presented to us. The belief was when fuel prices came back down again, we would pass that hurdle. And as you know, it was successful. It was, I think the first MRG was $755,000 for 6 months, and I think it was $56,000 total, the county 60% of that share. So had the commissioners not committed to that at that point, we wouldn't be here today. The service would have ended, almost 2 years ago. The next point we got was the MRG needed to continue from a risk mitigation standpoint. We're like, well, okay, that's, we're not spending a lot of money. The service was doing so good that they actually added a second flight, if you remember, November and December, not this past year, the year before that. And then we had the pilot wage issue, which was another cost that was baked into the cost of operating the service, which we did not know about the time that we first approached you. That wasn't a factor. So it may seem like the goalposts are changing, and maybe to a certain degree they're being moved for, I think, legitimate reasons. We did not go down the road believing that these things were going to happen, and while we won't tell them about this until the time that they happen, we're getting these things as we go along. I certainly understand from the county standpoint that the county has other roles and responsibilities. Even if you said that this is important to us, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is the most important thing with the other factors and other things that the county commissioners have to consider. I think at this point, all we can do, because we are not the ones who control the funding to be used for the MRG, we have some other entities, as Casey will talk about, who can help us with these efforts. But at the end of the day, we can't make that decision on whether or not the commission is going to fund this. I mean, we can only bring this to you, tell you what we think, what we know, what we're going to see in the future. And ultimately, whether you think it's a good idea or a bad idea or the best idea compared to other things that you're going to consider, obviously that's the role of the commission, not the role of the airport director, the airport board, or the Fly Casper Alliance. So I can speak for myself. We've never tried to be deceptive in terms of what we're looking for and when and why. That has changed as we've gone along.
Thank you. I'm not accusing you of that per se, okay? But I think you look through things with rosy glasses. That's not necessarily a bad thing, you know? I know you're an optimistic individual and you look things for the positive side of things. But at this point in time, rosy glasses aren't going to help us at all. You know, the bottom line is that the numbers keep getting bigger every year. And are we really getting any closer to getting this corrected? That's really what it comes down to. You know, that's the bottom line. And that's what we have to look at, because like I said, we're responsible, fiduciary responsibility to the county to make sure that we cover what we're required to do. We're constantly having people that are coming and asking for us to provide resources so that they can get things that are important to the county, in their opinion too. And trying to find out and hit that balance is always a challenge, and it always has been a challenge, and it always will be a challenge. But that's something that we have to really consider. We have to take that into consideration when we're doing things, and that's where I'm having the problem. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Laird.
I think that you're in a political squeeze, and I don't blame you for that. I get people calling me. I have had a lot of people call me lately that are very well-known people in the community who care about the community that want the commission to support these payments. They always ask me about you. They said, well, tell me about that manager. So here's what I say to them. I say, you're a good guy and you're knowledgeable, but I would like the public to know more about you, because they're judging us because we listen to you and a couple of other people. So I always like the public to know that we're smart enough not to be dealing with dummies and just accepting information that we don't check out. So the thing that irritates me about this whole deal, and this has always been a concept that irritates me. Now, in this county, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, how many people live in this county, 80-some thousand probably in that area. And 65 of them live in the city of Casper, 65,000. So there seems to be this political issue, well, this is a county facility, you guys need to pay everything. And yes, but the people in the city use the airport much more of a percentage than people in the county or in the little residing places. Some people don't fly at all. So I really wish that you could put effort and time and understanding into convincing the city they need to pay more money. They should pay more money. This is a deal for all of us. And I don't like having the burden sitting here every time that we get into this conversation that if I vote against this and this airline leaves, they're going to blame the commission. The commission's done a pretty good job in this matter so far. I do wonder how long we should sustain it. I wonder when the state may quit making any payments towards it, because that'll come at some point in time politically. But I'm hopeful we can get with the city and somehow convince them. It's city people who are using the airlines. Now, I don't know if you can keep those kind of statistics, but I got to believe it's 90% of the people who live in Casper that use that airline. And for us to continue paying all of this money without help, and we have our city manager is a great city manager. Mm-hmm. He understands money. He's brought the city out of the dark ages since I was on the city council. I was on the council of the committee who hired him, I think very highly of him. So I don't know, and I haven't ever asked him why he doesn't want to put money into this deal. I'm gonna turn that over to our chairman to maybe figure out a meeting for that at some point in time, because I think that might be profitable to do that, because having airlines in this community is very important. And I certainly don't want to be the guy that throws a vote that makes an airline leave here. But I don't like being criticized that I'm spending money, giving it to big billion-dollar airline companies of our taxpayers' money, and the truth is the percentage of our taxpayers probably don't use that airline. So we're in this balance, this delicate balance. So could he just give 2 minutes to explain to the public his background and why he's the city manager? And because I think people need to know who he really is.
He's not the
Or
city
excuse me, not the city manager, the airport manager, because people need to know who you are, Glenn. They need to know that you're not some doofus coming in here trying to do things that are just improper, because you're not. And I want them to know a little bit more about you. Could you just tell a little bit about yourself for a second here?
Would you introduce yourself,
Mr.
Mr. Glenn?
Sure. So I've been in airports for 36 years. This is my 5th airport in 3 states. I worked in 3 airports in Wisconsin, 1 in Iowa before I got here 17 years ago. Have a lot of airport experience. This is what I've done. This is what I have a bachelor's degree in aviation management. This is what I've wanted to do since the time I remember going to O'Hare with my family, watching airplanes take off. So I have a bachelor's degree. I have a master's degree in business. I have a professional accreditation, pilot's license. So this is what I do, and I appreciate Commissioners North's my maybe rose-colored glasses. I grew up in Chicago. I always thought I was pretty cynical by nature. So what I would say, and I'll just reiterate it to you, I will not tell you, and I have never approached, whether it's been the commissioners. I work for 5 airport boards. I try to think about what it is that you would want to know. If I was sitting in your position, what information would I want to know? And I would not tell you I believe something if I didn't believe it. I wouldn't tell you I know something if I didn't know it. This has been a change. We have never, up until the time that we had the MRG, life was a lot easier. We were the only airport in the state that did not receive some type of assistance, whether it's for air service, whether it's county, whether it's Jackson Hole Air. Everybody had some level of air service assistance except for us. The airlines came and go. If there was a market, they were able to stay into the market. If there wasn't a market like Allegiant, they left the market. So getting into MRG, we have a more experience from a state standpoint because other airports, rely on those. Now, Rock Springs, Sheridan, Gillette, Riverton, they rely on that because that's their only service. If they did not have the MRGs or have this in place, they wouldn't have air service at all. We're in a little bit different position, us in Jackson Hole, because if we lost the Delta service, we would still have the United service. It's not that the air service would go away.
So the only 2 airports in the state that have more than one commercial carrier are Jackson and Casper?
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. So we're in a little bit different position. And, and for the other communities, this is something that they know. This is something that if you go to Gillette, they've been dealing with this. Campbell County has been funding this for a long period of time. We're relatively new to the game when it comes to the MRGs and needing the MRGs. I have an article I can pass out that I probably should have passed out. There's a lot of examples of communities that are fighting for air service, that want air service, that don't have it. And all those communities are willing to put money up front for the service, hoping that they can entice a carrier to come into the market. It's that dynamic of a market. The airlines do not get up in the morning thinking about how great the service is for providing service to Casper. The airlines have other opportunities to take those airplanes and put it in other markets. So from that standpoint, not that we want to have the financial obligation for the MRG, but we're in a position to maintain something that a lot of other communities are willing to pay a lot of money to be able to get. Not saying that that's the reason why we would need to do this, but from a competitive standpoint with United, I think there's probably a lot of personal stories. You probably know mine. My wife had a heart transplant in the University of Utah Hospital. I know a lot of medical people fly back and forth. We're talking about connectivity to other medical resources for medical within this community. There are a lot of other examples of businesses that will tell you how important this is for service. And as Casey said, as we look at the Reno Air Races potentially coming here, if you look at the Wild Sports Ranch, which is not going to just attract people from high school sports, that we're talking about people coming from a bigger geographical area. It's not just having that carrier. If you're talking about people who are going to be flying in from other states for tournaments and competition at the Wild Sports Ranch, United doesn't fly everywhere. So if you're in a market where that's going to be, there may be air service opportunities, but United's not one of those primary markets, it's going to be more difficult to be able to have sports tournaments and bring people to the sports ranch if you do not have a second carrier with the second hub operation. So, that's, I think what from the important standpoint, again, I'm, in your position, I'm not the one who can convince you, and you have to certainly look at this need with all the other needs in the county. We understand this. We're going to continue to look at approaching those other communities and other entities that will find value in this to be able to help support this financially until the time that hopefully we will.
Thank you. I have one question. It'll be a very short answer.
You promise?
Very short answer. Very short question. Thank you very much, Glenn Januska. You're the manager of the airport here in Natrona County. You're doing a very fine job. Now, what I want to know is, are you recommending we continue to pay this money they're requesting so that Delta Airlines will come to this community?
Mr. Chairman, I would say yes. I think the economic benefits and the benefits for having the service outweigh the cost and the benefits that the county, the state has for this. I wish all the people who benefited from it were in a position to be able to help support this. I realize Natrona County is disproportionate in that regard. But I think the benefits to the county and the taxpayers is greater than the cost for the service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Laird. That was a good question. I appreciate that. Casey mentioned the shooting complex. Glenn, you didn't. You mentioned the Wyoming Sports Ranch, and you mentioned the medical community, if you will. I think that we're trying to land the state shooting complex here, and I personally feel that a second commercial carrier puts us above and ahead of the other communities that don't. And I'm not aware of Teton County or Jackson trying to get the shooting complex. So I think that we're, far ahead of the others in that respect and what we offer. When is the RARA decision going to be made, Glenn, to the best of your knowledge?
Mr. Chairman, I still think they have not told me anything different in terms of their schedule, and their schedule was to make an announcement by the end of the first quarter, so by the end of March of this year.
What was that announcement, Mr. Chairman? I didn't hear you.
Reno Air Race Association, they're relocating, and our airport, Glenn's airport, this county's airport, is a finalist for that.
A lot of our people don't know that, Mr. Chairman. That's why I asked. If maybe you could take a minute explaining really what that is so they'd understand that better.
Well, I think there are a couple other things, and I wanted to ask questions. I do think that it distinguishes Natrona County. Glenn, in your experience, from what you've seen out there paying attention, once a commercial carrier leaves a community, say, of the general size of Natrona County, how tough is it to get them back?
Mr. Chairman, I think right now, the pressures on air service and where the airlines are putting their resources, the issue with pilots and the lack of pilots that have not caught up, the fact that you're talking about going to larger airplanes, the 50-passenger airplanes are going to eventually go away. I think it's very difficult. I think a lot of the communities that lost service during COVID, if you have a Des Moines, Iowa that had, let's say, 6 United flights and they were down to 3, United is looking at expanding and getting back to 6 flights. They're not looking at going into new markets. They're looking at backfilling what they lost during COVID. So my belief is if we lost this service, not only would it be difficult to get Delta back, but I think it would be challenging to get another carrier coming in also. Is the community going to support this? Or is there a way to be able to mitigate risk for coming in? So I think that this also has an impact on another carrier that we may want to come in. So I think it'd be difficult to get another carrier coming in. I think it would be next to impossible to get Delta to come back in after this.
People tell us from time to time that instead of using the money for the MRG, we ought to use the money to attract a different carrier. Can you tell the public or those listening today what your airport or what your involvement's been in trying to land another carrier over the last few years?
Sure. So one of the first things from an air service development standpoint, and again, I've been doing this for the air service portion of it for about 30 years. As soon as you start talking about an airline coming into a new market, that's the kiss of death. I've seen airports that have lost air service after the airline made a decision to start service because the announcement was out there before the public announcement. So without getting into specifics, what we know is we lose about 50% of our passenger traffic. We have a leakage study that shows this. We lose 50% of our passengers to Denver. We know based upon credit card purchases, if you purchase a credit card airline ticket in Natrona County, as an example, not you specifically, but we will know by your credit card where that airline ticket was purchased, which airport you flew out of, which airline you flew on, what you paid from a fare, and where you went. That information is available. It's reported to the DOT. The point in this is we know that we have a much larger market. If you think about the size of a pie, only 50% of that pie is going to Casper. We also can go to United and say, if the other 50% of the passengers were going to Denver and getting on a United flight, then United doesn't care one way or another. They get them in Casper, they get them in Denver. But if the 50% of the passengers that are going to Denver, if only 20% of those are getting on United, then we have an opportunity to be able to capture those other ones, either with additional capacity for United or potentially bringing another carrier in. If 100% of our passengers were using the airport, the only way you bring another carrier in is it comes at the expense of an existing carrier. So there's opportunities that are out there. We know where passengers are flying. We know where the likelihood for success on new service would be. Just as an example, an American Airlines going service into Phoenix or American Airlines going into Dallas, we would know how successful it is based upon how many passengers are going to those end destinations. So that's what we look at. We just don't meet with carriers to say, hey, we have a great community. Would you like to be able to serve it? We, in essence, do the analysis that they would be doing to show them what the demand is, where the passengers are going, and then we come up with the support package. I'm actually going to be at an air service conference next week, and I have some meetings scheduled with airlines to specifically talk about Casper and to develop that relationship. Last thing with airlines is, and I've probably said this maybe to the commissioners, developing relationship with airlines is a relationship. It's almost like dating. I mean, most people don't meet and propose and get married the next day. Maybe in Southern California you do, but here, it's developing relationships. So you don't meet with the carrier for one day and say, hey, do you want to come in and serve our market? We've developed relationships with the carriers over a period of time. There's not a carrier that I'm going to be meeting with, well, with the exception of one, that we have not developed a relationship with before. So that's what we look at doing. People don't hear about air service efforts because we can't talk about our air service efforts. It's like economic development. You make an announcement when the business decides to locate to Casper, to Natrona County, not during the process of trying to get them to come to Casper, to Natrona County.
Thanks, Casey. I think there was some discussion about banking seats so that the business community might decide that they use the Delta flight 5 times a month or 5 times a year. They buy those seats, and then we have certainty. And SkyWest has certainty, and we have a better idea of what that MRG number is going to be. Has there been any additional effort in the last month or so on that, and whether that's going to come to fruition?
Not that I'm aware of. We've talked about a lot of different ways of how to manage that, and I think that most likely, if we were going to do that scenario, would be that we'd have asked businesses to commit to X number of dollars per quarter, and then they would save their receipts and turn those in at the end of the quarter and be invoiced for anything that was less than the receipts that they had purchased for that. But we have not done anything further to develop that program.
Well, I think that I'd like to see the business community go to the city of Casper and say, if you're in for more than $200,000, unless it's $200,000 a quarter, if you're in for more than $200,000, we're in for this much. And then the next time we meet on this issue, you come to us and say, if we do this, then the city is doing this, and then private communities doing that. So it's more of a partnership in that respect. That's where I'd like to see us wind up. Anybody else have any other thoughts or questions?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I don't think our people know exactly what this Reno air racing thing is. That's why I asked you to clarify that, because they're confused. And maybe could you give us a 1-minute dissertation on this Reno air race thing, Glenn?
15 seconds.
How many seconds?
5.
1.5. So the air races have been in Reno for almost 60 years. It attracts about 58,000 people per year. About 80% of those people come from out of town. It's a 10-day event, typically in September, and they are no longer going to be in Reno, so they're looking for a new home in 2025. We submitted an application. It was with 6 communities, and they're whittling it down and looking at making a selection for where they want those air races to be. University of Nevada, Reno did an economic impact study like we do for CNFR and so forth. It has a $100 million economic impact per year. So the importance from an air service standpoint is, if you want to get those people to attend the races and stay in the hotels and spend money in the community, we need to be able to have the air service to bring them in. I know that wasn't 1.5.
But that was very helpful, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner
So I have a question and I have a statement. The question, Glenn, comes when you talked about, you can tell on the Denver end of things, if people go to Denver and get on a United flight, then you want to backfill seats here if they're not necessarily flying out of here. Is there a way of telling that if they fly out of here on United or if they just go to Denver and get on a different carrier, so American, and go to Dallas? Is there a way of gathering those numbers to see how many people are actually using a different airline that are coming from here? And I guess I ask that more so that if we have oil field workers flying from here to Dallas or here to Houston, or they're going to Denver to go to Houston, would it make more sense to go after an American Airlines because they'd have that connection all the way through?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, so we would know if somebody purchased a ticket, and we look at our catchment area, which is kind of Natrona County, Converse County primarily, and say those are people who should be flying out of Casper. So if somebody in those 2 counties buys an airline ticket with a credit card, we know that, and we know if they buy the ticket and it's to fly out of Denver, where they're going to be driving to, we would know that. We would know what carrier they're going to fly on and so forth. So we do, and there's a stimulation portion. If you have direct service to Dallas as an example, you will have more people fly to Dallas than are flying to Dallas right now, let's say going through Denver. So there's stimulation factors that we know of. So we can pretty much predict what the demand is going to be for that service, not just going to Dallas, but the connections beyond that. Because American certainly has a network in Dallas. They have a network within Phoenix. So we can predict not only how many people are going to go to Dallas as their end destination, but also how many people would realistically make connections through going to other communities, which becomes part of the factor in whether or not the service is going to be successful.
Okay. Then the only statement I want to make is, you know, nobody likes to pay this. I think we beat that horse to the end. Nobody wants to pay it. However, in my opinion, I'll use an analogy that Commissioner North used. I'll throw my rose-colored glasses on, because when you sit and look at the things that the future possibly does hold or does not hold, and, you know, if the shooting complex comes in here, I think we were talking, or it was at least the information was given out that you could have 400 people that would come to an event. And are they all going to fly? No, but you're going to get people that are going to fly. We got this is the first year coming up for the National Junior College. I think you got 23 teams, not 23 people, 23 teams and family members coming to this community. They're not walking, they're not driving. Some may drive, but a majority are probably going to be flying in here. Then take a step beyond that. We've talked about businesses that potentially could it doesn't have to be butts in a seat, so to speak, on a plane. It can be cargo in the base of a plane that's going to lower this down. And I know you guys are working on that. Then if you look at what we've got going on, and, you know, look at you, Justin, but, you know, you got Mesa that's looking at building a 365,000 square foot facility and putting on upwards of 700 people. I'm sure they're going to travel. And that's more people coming into this community. So to sell ourselves short now and say, oh, well, we're getting tired of paying this, you know, there's ways that we can figure this out. But if we do take that step and say, okay, well, we're not going to pay this anymore, and Delta goes away, and it's difficult to get them back, but yet we're going to bring in more people to live in this community that are going to need air service more than just United, it just seems very short-sighted to sit here and say, well, the answer to it is quit paying. That's not the answer to it. You got to look forward. You got to look at the future and what the future is bringing. Are all these things going to happen? Maybe not. But right now, they're looking pretty darn good on a bunch of these, and it just seems to me that it's not something that we should just make a knee-jerk reaction on and make that decision that, you know, we shouldn't follow through with this. The last thing I'm going to say is, it's been said up here several times, I don't think it's your responsibility. I don't think it's Advanced Casper's responsibility. I don't think it's the business community's responsibility to figure this problem out. If we want to talk to the city and see if they're going to put in, then maybe the commissioners and the city and maybe business owners should find a time, I don't know, do a crazy thing and get in a room together and maybe talk to each other and figure this out, as opposed to directing you guys to go back and talk to the city and see if they'll put 200,000 in. Or we could walk across the street and ask them ourselves.
So
I think we should do all of that.
So, Commissioner Laird, so I visited with the mayor about that over the lunch hour today, among other things. I visited with the city manager about that, this MRG situation, a number of times. You know, I do feel we have a part in that, but we, I think, need assistance, and I'm asking for Fly Casper Alliance's assistance. I think that is part of your charge. And so we're out of time unless you have any final words. We appreciate it. We're going to deal with the MRG sooner rather than later. Anything that you wanted to add or that we didn't cover?
I think so. Thank you for your time. Thank you for letting us come here and talk to you. I'm always happy to answer questions or get them answered if I don't have the answers.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, we are behind. Our next item is the 136 West B Street property. Heather, do you want to start out on that, or do you want me to?
Well, you may have the best information, Mr. Chairman, so I'm happy to let you, and then I'll fill in if I can.
All right. The commission is aware that we have put under contract the property located at 136 West B Street. It is a building that is not salvageable. It will be raised and likely turned into a parking lot. We don't have a time frame for either the demolition. We do have a price for the demolition, which is the same price as was offered to the seller. That is roughly $37,000. There is some unknown. That includes asbestos removal, except for removal of asbestos material from the basement, which was not able to be evaluated, and we didn't receive any estimate for that because of the condition, specifically the water in the basement. So there is a little bit of uncertainty with that. And I just kind of wanted to open up to the commission on the time frame that we'd like to move forward. We need to do a phase one. I don't think we're going to do any other inspections. Is that consistent with everybody's recollection? We have a closing. Commissioner Friel, did you?
My recollection was we were going to do a phase one on that. I am still somewhat concerned if we get in that basement and there is asbestos, what potentially that could cost to abate that. So I would like to have that still as a negotiating factor in this.
And we don't have much time. As I recall, we have a due diligence inspection period that ends, is it March 1st? So that's right around the corner. Has there been any movement on the phase one, retention of a phase one firm?
No, Mr. Chairman, we're still in the process of trying to do that, but hopefully within the next few days, we can get somebody on board.
Okay, and we need to do that. With respect to asbestos in the basement, it certainly could have those non-friable tiles. Those shouldn't be a ton of money to remediate. To the extent there's friable pipe wrap or something like that, I don't know if there are insulated pipes.
Some of that stuff can actually, depending on how it's in place and what it is, may not have to be removed. So, I mean, when we're turning it into a parking lot and not a livable space, there are some variations as far as what you can and can't do.
Well, but I mean, encapsulating, with carpet over the 9-inch tiles can be done, but I don't know if the county can or should be creating an environmental situation on a property. And I know that's not what you were saying, but I just don't know where it would go if we had asbestos that we then buried and paved over.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is that we need to look at our options before we make a decision on that. That's really what's coming down to it is look at what the legal options are, ask the DEQ, talk to them. If that is the case, I'm not saying it is, I'm saying if that's the case, look at those options and work with them and see what they'll allow us to work with.
Well, we have 9 days to walk away from the property. I don't know how much, and we, by design, we I think put in our offer. I know we put in our offer to have our inspections done. So if we're not comfortable to the point of walking away from it, that's the option before March 1st, or renegotiate, try and get an extension. I see both Mr. Friel and our county legal wanting to jump in.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's actually till March 15th we have.
Okay,
To get those
moved
complete.
that back.
Yeah.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to say exactly what you just said. If it comes down to it and we need to get an extension, I'm pretty sure we'd probably be able to get an extension to finish or to extend out inspections even further. I guess just to add to it, if we're talking some tiles, it's not a large amount of money. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is the unknown. If we get in there and even with the phase one, if we get in there and find out that sections of downtown that we know have the plume in it, if it happens to get into that area and it's going to become very, it's going to cost a lot for the county to clean all that up, then I just want to make sure that we still have that opportunity to walk away from it if need be. I just don't see putting the county on the hook for a large unknown at this point.
Did Mr. Peterson look at that? I thought he gave some opinion that they're not the basement.
So, Heather, would you get back to me by the end of the week on both the schedule for the phase one? And then I can talk to Mr. Peterson about best case, worst case in the basement. And specifically, I'm going to ask him about the friable asbestos around insulated pipes. And if that's a non-issue, then worst case scenario might be $10,000 to $20,000 versus $100,000 to $200,000. And I seriously don't think that the exposure is that, but we ought to be prudent about it. So we'll keep moving forward on that. Another issue, Commissioner Laird and Commissioner North have your microphones on. Did you guys want to jump in on that, or, okay, one's off. Or do you want me to move on to the next thing with respect to that property?
Move on to the next thing.
So the next thing is, what do you want to do? Say we get to closing. Do we want to, we close, we accept the whatever environmental, physical property conditions there may be. Do we want to engage Mr. Peterson to immediately commence activities to get that dirt to, kind of a graded level? Do you want to then move forward with doing a base course? Do you want to then move forward with asphalt? Do you want to do a wait and see? We could wait till the cows come home to actually take down the building. My personal feeling is that we move sooner rather than later on that piece of it. But Commissioner Friel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my first meeting with the MPO was this last week, and you probably will understand this a lot better than I do, but there is a pot of money that we are next in rotation for in the MPO specifically for fixing roads, and I don't know whether this parking lot would be a part of that or not, but I would be curious as to whether this is a project that we could utilize some of that funding for, and that funding, my understanding, is upwards of $3 million. So if it's a possibility of doing this project in the MPO with those funds, I'd prefer that we answer that question.
$3 million for the parking lot.
It won't take $3 million, but
We'll
you
take
could.
the $3 million. No, I'm not sure if that will fit. But please do see if that's a possibility. And then just in general, even if it doesn't fit that, I'm sure we could find some other projects. So are you thinking, commissioners, that we would move forward with Mr. Peterson's firm as soon after closing as practical?
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you. I would prefer to do it sooner rather than later.
Just so I'm on the record, I agree.
And I would like to look into the other thing before we make a commitment to it.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Sooner
But
rather
I-
than later.
But I think that should we get through our inspections, I or legal would reach out to Mr. Peterson, so at least he can get it on his calendar, and so we're not waiting 6 months versus, within 30 days after closing.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. I think we should get it down. Obviously, we all know that that building is beyond repair, and the last thing I'd want is something that we now own as a possible hazard to somebody in the public. So the quicker we get it down, the better.
Good, and then we can pick up discussion at a later point on what type of material, what kind of parking lot we want to build and when we want to build it. Okay. Heather, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Thank you.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, is Commissioner Milne still on line? I'd like to have his input if he is.
Yeah, thanks. It looks like we're still connected. Commissioner Milne, are you there?
I am. I sent you a text, just so everybody else can hear it as well. I'm in favor. I believe we need to start moving as this year continues to move forward. People become more and more scheduled. We need, if we're going to do this, then we need to start scheduling the different aspects to it. We do need that inspection, but maybe there's a possibility if there's I don't know, if we find something odd in the corner of that building or whatever, the current owner can split the cost or do something, some kind of mediation split like that, just as a suggestion.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we are to Heather, agenda review, legal update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a last-minute addition I would like the commission to add for approval tonight. It's an application for Title 28 cost-sharing grant application. This is from Parks. It's for repairing a footbridge below Pathfinder Dam. We have it ready to go. It's kind of time-sensitive. The total amount of the grant is $150,000. So we would be, the feds would be putting in $75,000 and then we would be putting in $75,000. So we have it ready to go and just ask that we could amend the agenda to include this evening.
That would be for the next fiscal year,
Yes, I believe
the
so.
funding of it.
Mr. Chairman, that is one thing that the Bureau of Rec requested that we do, and they're the ones that are pushing this. It's not Parks, it's actually the Bureau of Rec that was pushing this Title 28 grant request. So, yeah, it needed to be expedited as soon as possible.
Heather, do we add that to our consent or has it already been added?
It has not been added.
So that could be a new item G. And you said that's the Title 28 cost share contract with the Bureau of Reclamation?
Yes.
Is that how you want it to?
Yes, I think
Amen.
that's a good title for it, yes.
Let's do it as a new item. Okay.
And then outside of that, if there's any questions about any of the items on the agenda this evening, I know our office, we added a contract with Vital Records Control, who provide the shredding for the county departments. The investment advisory agreement, this is for Peaks Financial. This is for the $57 million of the hospital funds. That's on there for approval this evening. The subdivision agreement with the city of Casper for the health department property. And then we made a modification to the proposed resolution 41-14-A to kind of, to change the language. recommended by Commissioner or Chairman Nicolazan. Those are the only items that I think legal has added. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Any questions for council?
I do have one question. Is the order prepared on that assessment hearing we had a couple, 3 weeks ago?
I believe Lita has it, if not complete, just about complete for you to review, yes.
When will that be done?
She might be able to speak to that a little better, but I think she's nearly finished.
By the end of the week, sir.
Thank you.
So we have public hearings for liquor licenses. We have retail, we have 10. We have 2 for limited retail. That's the boat club and the country club. We have 4 for retail county malt beverage, and we have 1 for the airport. Madam Clerk or Council, what do you think? I guess we have to open up a hearing for each of them separately? Or can we do these in bulk, or just refresh my recollection on what would be an efficient way of handling these?
Mr. Chairman, if I remember correctly, we have done them in bulk previously.
So, commissioners, do you want to pull any of these out specifically, or do you want to do them in kind of by category of liquor license? We have to let the public speak to these. There may be issues with some, all, or none of them. Any thoughts?
I like the in bulk and let people say for each one what they want to say. Just announce. Is there anybody for?
Unless there's one of these that has an issue. If there's one that has an issue, I think we ought to pull that.
The two
And individually discuss that one.
The 2 that come to mind are retail liquor license. The number 7 on the agenda is Northern Dreams, and number 9 on the retail liquor license agenda is Taven LLC, doing business as Mile High Tide Inns. We don't know if we're thinking there's going to be a separate discussion on any of those, or executive session on any of those. Any thoughts, Commissioner Friel?
Mr. Chair, from the information we've been provided as far as Northern Dreams, I would ask that we pull that off and at least have a discussion about it.
Okay.
In reference to number 9, Taven, I'm not aware of any reason why we'd want to pull that one off.
Legal counsel, is there anything on any of these other than Northern Dreams?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner North, I am not familiar with any issues with Tavin LLC. It's not been brought to our attention that there's been any issues. So really the only one, that we feel should be considered separately is number 7, Northern Dreams.
All right. Madam Clerk, do you know of any issues that we may need to be aware of?
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I've been approached on how to do a transfer of ownership of the license for Tavin LLC. And I think the McMillans might be here tonight to speak to that. But other than that, I don't have any further information.
Okay.
Just a question on the Northern Dreams. Is there some statute that precludes us from granting their request for renewal?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner North, I think Jared Holbrook provided some information for you.
I saw that. But
There is a statute that might potentially
well,
preclude
now,
us renewing
might
it.
doesn't do it for me on the legal issues. I want to know if there's a statute that says we're precluded from extending this.
I want to just jump in. I think that, to the extent that it's legal advice, I think that it would be more appropriate to have it in an executive session, Commissioner Laird. So I don't know how far it's appropriate. It would be
Good
to
idea.
go on this.
I agree.
Mr. Chairman, in addition, on the retail county malt beverage permits, Number 4 is actually a restaurant license renewal, so I think Michelle is correcting the agenda as we speak.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Commissioner Friel.
I guess this is a question for the clerk. Did I understand you correctly that there's been an inquiry made as far as the transfer on number 9?
That is correct.
Do we know who it's to be transferred to, or is that something we're going to find out?
There has not been a transfer application submitted to my office. This is just verbally, a verbal inquiry about it.
Okay.
Okay, so there's really nothing, at this point in time, we really don't have anything to go off of other than they're applying for renewal.
Correct. There's no, yes,
Okay,
there's no
all right,
additional.
So there's no real reason to take that off
Correct.
separately.
Yeah.
That's where I was going with that, so,
No, you're correct. There's
Okay.
no actual paperwork been filed yet.
okay.
All right, so the motion tonight, when one of you makes it, ought to remove that number 7, Northern Dreams, from the bulk motion, okay? Anything else on either liquor licenses or the agenda, commissioners?
Other than I really would like to know the solid legal position before we take anything off the agenda or change it. Because I need to know what the legal authority is, and I haven't had an opportunity to look into it myself.
Well, maybe, Commissioner Laird, I appreciate that, and I continue to appreciate the days when we'd have an executive session before the regular meeting, but I'm told that we need to do it this way. What we can do, I suppose, council, subject to your approval, would be to deal with the bulk of these. Then when we deal with this other one, maybe we open up the hearing, but then before we close the hearing, or I'm not sure exactly when, but we go into executive session just for the purpose of hearing about this one. So I guess we could do it before opening the public hearing on the Northern Dreams.
We could do that, Mr. Chairman, yeah, to just kind of reorder the agenda to include that.
Anybody okay with that?
Fine with me.
Okay, Michelle, all is clear? Okay, great. Okay, then I think what we're gonna do is be grateful that Lita, you agreed at my request to be pushed from 155 to now before our round table. So we're gonna talk about the sale of real property.
Yes, let me hand you.
I think we have a motion to take a 5-minute break. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm sorry, I didn't hear
What's
that.
what's another 5 minutes, right?
It's fine.
Thank you.
I guess I can still pass them out though.
Thank you, ma'am.
There you go. Oh, Commissioner Milne, you said you did not need anything because you're familiar with this.
I have a copy, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either way is good.
just so you know, for all the sideboard talking that's going on, there's live mics.
Thank you. Dave, taking a break.
Always a good reminder, I guess. Sorry about that, Michelle. Well, I. Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't catch that. Heather. What time is the Title 20, well, the IT meeting tomorrow? I think so. That's probably on my calendar, on my electronic calendar, but I didn't get it, the time on my paper calendar. And I never think to look at the electronic one. Oops. Okay. Got it. Tracy, did you have a good weekend? Good. I know, that's the problem when you're gone. It's sometimes not even worth it. Were you, oh, you're down in Cheyenne? Oh, how was it? Amazing? I've sat through all that as well. It's fun.
All right, Lita, thank you. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So I handed everyone a copy of the resolution regarding the sale of real property, and then this little map that Commissioner Milne did not need because he was aware of it. However, I need it. So we received a call, I believe, last month, almost just a couple weeks after this resolution was signed, and the resolution was signed on the 19th of December 2023. In any event, I received a call from a property owner in the Webb Creek Ranches area, Saddle String, and he was inquiring whether, if you look at the pink portion, if the pink portion 2A, that I have it just labeled that, would be for sale. And I let him know that, oh, well, we have a resolution about the sale of property, if you just want to check that out, and I will speak with the commissioners. Then we did some research to get some context, and as Commissioner Milne remembers, the homeowner, or property owner, excuse me, in the green, originally in the green, became the property owner in the purple. It doesn't look super purple on here. In the purple, and it seemed to be a fairly easy transaction because there was the property owner, I believe, in the green in the beginning had built onto our land. And yeah, you all probably know this better than I do, but from what we can piece together, we were kind enough to just give it to him. We're not really sure.
No, we sold it to him.
We sold it to him?
We
Okay.
sold it to him.
That makes more sense, but we weren't able to really piece that together. In any event, the gentleman that I spoke with is interested in the pink highlight 2A.
The stuff on the right-hand side of our map,
I'm sorry?
this stuff.
In the middle, yeah, or outlined, and so it would be, I have to, lots 2, 3, 4, and 5. We own, and he's interested in.
So do you need anything from us other than a willingness to?
Just the resolutions, you all need to say it's for sale.
Yeah.
Agree. It's for sale.
Just for a little history, this property
Sure.
was, the county acquired this because when they developed this years ago, they couldn't sell these lots.
Oh, okay.
So they went into tax and
Okay.
they basically reverted to the county at that time. So,
Thank you.
most of this property is pretty questionable. It's full of shallow water table, deep ravines, and not a whole lot of it's buildable. So that's part of the reason why these were probably left over when they did that. So just so you have a background of what's going on.
Thank you. And the gentleman who's inquiring, his lot now is where the red X is. I do believe that he believes it'll be as simple as it was for the original homeowner in the green. However, I did let him know that things have changed since then, so it won't be quite as easy as you can just make an offer and we accept it, because we now have the resolution.
I personally don't have any problem with, I mean, when we actually sold that small chunk, at that time, we were hoping that they would buy the entire piece. So we had already, and they didn't want the entire piece. So, I personally don't have any problem with getting this off of our rolls and getting it back onto the tax rolls, where we're actually, doing something with it.
Lita, would you either remind us, well, why don't you remind us of what the next steps would be if we, well, the next steps period?
Sure. You all would decide whether you want to sell or convey the property, and that would need to be in the best interest. You would need to find that it would be in the best interest of the county. And then we obtain well, all of us obtain, I guess, an appraisal for that property prior to the property being made available for sale, unless you all determine good cause exists otherwise. Then we start with all the notice provisions in the real property resolution, posting it on the website, the newspaper, county website, and so forth. And then it goes into the sealed hard copy bids and when they're due. And it goes into how a bidder bids. And then if you all accept the offer, which you can accept, reject, make a counteroffer, as long as you deem it in the best interest of the county, then legal would prepare the purchase contract and quitclaim deed. And then it goes into more timelines regarding what has to be done next. The buyer is responsible for the costs of publication unless good cause is determined. And then again, we have the minimum $500 fee that shall be assessed for administrative costs. And you all have reserved the right to withdraw the property from the bid process at any time for any reason.
Lita, and I'm asking because I don't know, can we utilize what the assessed value would be on that property from the county assessor?
You would have to amend the resolution because it's a number 2 says the BOCC shall obtain an appraisal. I don't
know. I don't know if that would work or not as something like that.
We'd have to amend it.
So, okay.
So this is, this off of Saddle String?
Yeah, that's on the north side of Saddle String.
Right.
Saddle String and 220.
Okay. My, I have driven by this, my whole life, like a lot of people probably, and not paid much attention to it. In order to determine that it's in the public's best interest to convey this property, I personally would want to hear from our professional staff, including legal, planning, and road and bridge. I think those are the obvious ones that could come into play here. Are you?
Saddle String's actually a private road.
I understand that.
So-
Highway 220 is not, and
Right.
the Wyoming Department of Transportation continues to think about Highway 220. I don't know if they could potentially utilize this area for a staging on down the road. But I think that I'm not able to say that this is in our best interest, that we say that this is available quite yet. I might get there, but those are the things that come to mind. And obviously with our planning, our planner position not being filled, that's a little problematic, but those are some of
Mr. Chairman?
my thoughts. Yeah, Commissioner Millen.
I'd suggest also potentially just a brief written synopsis or whatever from the assessor of what that piece of property would be doing for the county as far as for the tax base as well.
That's a good idea. Lita, can you inquire with the assessor and maybe maybe she'll make some typical adjustments or assumptions on how to answer Commissioner Milne's question? Who would, well, I guess we don't need to identify the individual that is seeking to acquire it. Oh, great. Thank you. So, any other comments on this? Lita, are there any issues from the legal department on the county conveying this to a private third party, versus retaining it for some reason?
I don't believe so, but I do agree that's a good idea to talk to Road and Bridge, Planning and Zoning. I never thought about YDOT. Maybe the way I understand, they might want to use that as a,
No, the way, okay, so first of all, I think that it'd be useful to have a memo from each of the impacted or potentially impacted departments. Even if it's a 2-sentence, we'd have no concerns with. I mean, you've seen that in the development arena where they send it out to every department, either in the county or the city. And if you don't have a comment or no concerns, that's all you say. I think that's doing our job. So something simple like that in writing. With respect to YDOT, YDOT pays private parties, and I suppose could pay the county for basically staging storage rent, if you will, for a construction project. They buy dirt from time to time. They need to get rid of dirt from time to time. So I'm not saying YDOT needs to be contacted, but for example, Road and Bridge, Mr. Hagler, could be contacted. So why don't you contact him and just see if there are any issues that he sees or any possible utility or use or value of this parcel for a Road and Bridge, or he's working with YDOT all the time, obviously.
okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Commissioner.
And I would like you to find out what the assessor has it assessed at. If you could do that, it'd be pretty easy, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Market value $469,000.
On the assessors.
Assessed value 44,000. Tax 3,000. Well, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's exempt.
Yeah.
It's exempt because.
No, and that was kind of my comment. Why I was saying that was, I'd like to have some eyes on it actually, and give us a up-to-date look at it.
Is the offer 469? Because you might be able to move forward pretty efficiently. All right. Lita, did you have anything else on this?
No, we just wanted to make you all aware and find out what you would like us to do next.
Do a little more due diligence for us internally, and I think that the interested party can be told that, hey, we just have to do a little bit more internally, and then we'll have maybe something to report in a couple weeks or a month.
Okay, thank you.
Not sure if on the, I guess that's a Danielle and the planning third party. Okay, so I don't have anything else other than we're going to move into commissioner comments, I think. Or is there anything else from legal? Okay. How about we pick on Commissioner Milne? Commissioner comments.
I don't really have anything, don't want to tie on up too much. I was really pleased to see the letters from the auditors for the various, for the county, for library, for the fair board. It could be a whole lot worse. We did really good, so I'm kind of happy about that. Short of that, Fairbank Board has discovered they went with a new architect from Riverton. It's saving them a whole lot of money. Looks like we will be able to revamp those bathrooms with grandstands. It may be right at budget or just a hair over potentially. But that project is actually moving forward and looks a lot better than the last report that I had where we weren't able to do anything. So there you have it.
Okay. Commissioner Laird.
Two things. One is one that emotionally affects me for various reasons, and that is I'd like to see a resolution prepared that we obtain some of our land and turn it into a county cemetery to fulfill our statutory function of burying those poor souls who, for one reason or another, have lost touch with their families and other friends and members. I think it would be a very good thing for us to do. Secondly, there sure are a lot of people that are commenting on why we should buy the First Interstate Bank building. I don't know whether we should or not. I don't have any opinion really. But I do think that we certainly should think about it and investigate it and have a whatever type of meeting we need to have to discuss that issue, just to say that we're on top of things. I don't know whether, Mr. Friel knows more about these things than I do. I don't know whether it's a good deal or what they really want for it or what it could be used for or what it could be certainly turned into, what the cost would be. But any time there's a potential of saving the county millions of dollars, I'd be sure wanting to look at it. So it's just a thought of mine. Thank you.
Was that the first or the second? Two items, the cemetery and the Commissioner North.
I wasn't ready.
You
Oh,
need a minute?
I'm going to be on the fly here on some of this stuff. Michael Brown and I went out and we sat down with the Bureau of Rec about a week and a half ago, and this was all what started this. We had had a letter sent to them requesting a meeting back in October, and since that time, there was some stuff that came up that we wanted to discuss a little bit more. And those were the primary reasons that we were looking at. When we got there, one of the things that came up was the Title 28 walkway bridge below Pathfinder Dam, and that they were highly supportive of that, and they wanted to get that reestablished. And there was a grant request for that. So that was one of the things we discussed. We talked about the water and sewer replacement lines in the trailer park, and that we had paid for the engineering, and we had requested that if we had used lake fund monies for any of that, and the answer on that was no. We also discussed something that the Bureau of Rec brought up, and that is actually an administrative cost. And that's something that we can actually utilize from the lake fund money that moves it into a non-restricted fund, so we can utilize it for other items and not have to worry about just exactly where that goes. We don't have a hard number pinned down or anything like that, but that is something that they're very supportive of. They talked about different facilities around this part of the country as far as how much they actually look at and what they do. And we're one of the few that don't have an administrative cost right now that's tied into that, to pull that money aside so we can actually utilize it to support not only staff but equipment buildings, whatever else. So that was one of the big reasons why we wanted to sit down and talk to them about that. Since budget season's coming up, we wanted to make sure that we had that kind of ironed out and moving forward. Some of that money, they even said that we could actually utilize some of that money to work on something like the Bishop Point Road. That's a county road, but it's not inside the overall area, but it does take you to the Bureau of Rec property. So that's something that they said that we could actually look at. So, it could be a big benefit to us as far as giving us a little bit more flexibility to get some of these things done. We talked about a lot of different things, but those were the biggest things that we were really discussing about. They did, because in the letter that was sent back in October, they did have quite a bit of material that they had prepared for us when we got in there, and basically it was some of the timeline of the Alcoa Trailer Court, and it goes all the way back to, they started in the 1935 with the Kindred project, and it goes all the way through. And some of that information, I mean, it's pretty interesting when you read through this, as far as the development and how things went and what that trailer park was originally designed to be, and how it kind of got off track on some of that stuff. But that was really not what we went out there to talk about. That just happened to be because that was the top thing on the letter that was sent out by Michael. And I thought we all had seen that same letter. But that was all sent out back in, like I said, October. So we talked about different things as far as the ski club, the boat club, the cabin area, as far as the docks, the maintenance, how we could improve things, and then carryover funds. And they basically, one of the things with the carryover funds, by moving this into an administrative fund, then it doesn't look like a carryover fund, because when we start carrying over funds on an annual basis like that, sooner or later they can take that back from us at any time. If it's in an administrative fund that we can utilize, then that's not something that we have to report to them, and they don't care about it. So it's not really, we're still going to utilize the money out there in the same place, but it just moves it around so it's more flexible for us, and so we don't have to go back and keep asking them year after year, because they don't want us to ask year after year to be able to carry over funds. So that's the first thing. Last week some of us were down in Cheyenne at the Wyoming County Commissioners Association meeting, and had a lot of good discussion with a lot of different guys on different things, to see what's going on in their counties. And, we all think that we're little islands, that our problems are our problems, but really when it comes down to it, we all share a lot of similar things. And that's one of the reasons why I like going to those, is because we can work on different things as far as solutions to issues that come up, and look for ways that we can improve not only our county, but the state. And so for me, that's something that I really enjoy doing. So that's pretty much it. I know I'm leaving stuff out, but that's a good start.
Thank you, Commissioner Friel.
The only thing I have is Lieutenant Bullard from the police department got a hold of me, and at the next meeting that we have, they do have a CRC board position open for community corrections, or I think it used to be CAC, but anyways, they have one board position, 2 applicants on it. They're going to forward me that information, and I'll make sure it gets out to you guys so you know who they are, and they just want help in picking the best person for the job. That's it.
I think we, I'm inviting Michael Brown, to come to our meeting, March 5th, I believe, our next meeting. I think there are a number of things we can touch base on, some status updates, some BOR, updates. There might be some more, follow-up on some of the items that, Commissioner North mentioned. I know Commissioner Friel, may or may not be ready, to go over another item, that, involves BOR. So I think we'll plan on that. We were, three of us were down in Cheyenne. I find that meeting, that County Commissioners Association meeting to be a real highlight each year. I think Jeremiah Riemann does a great job as executive director of that organization, herding the cats, 23 counties and their county commissioners, and really in a well thought out way determine what are county priorities and what are not. There are a lot of things that are important pieces of legislation to members of our community, and to people in the state, but are things that maybe don't have a real significant impact on the county, or its fiscal status. And so I think he and his staff do a great job. We have, as a county, taken positions on certain things, supporting or opposing or just monitoring. In many cases, we have no position. I think the commissioners need to be aware of, and I know that the three of us that were there are pretty much aware of what position the WCCA has taken on things. The executive director has asked and I think is supported in his request that we not take individually or count by county, individual counties or individual commissioners take positions that are inconsistent with positions taken by the WCCA membership without first contacting him. And so as we continue our discussions with legislators throughout this budget session, just a reminder of our commitment to him to let him know so he's not thrown under the bus. He does a good job for the county. And I think that there's a lot going on with taxation, property tax, sales tax. There's some things that are, I think, no-brainers where we increase eligibility for the refund, property tax relief programs, so that more people can qualify for that. I think that's good. I think that's easy, and I think that'll be well supported by the legislature. I think there's some things that are super creative, including a proposal by Representative Harshman. I think that we will monitor how that goes. I am concerned about that not being, the impacts of that not being completely thought out. It's fairly new. It's a very new proposal. And I think that's more of an interim topic, but that's just my personal opinion. I appreciate our legislators. Many of them came to the county commissioner-sponsored dinner, and that was Thursday night, and I think we had a good discussion. I think that anytime you can get together with a group of people who you may or may not agree with on all the issues is good, and so I appreciate I think we had I think we may have had all of the representative delegation.
Didn't have senators.
The representatives, though, the House representatives. Only Senator Scott made it, but I know the Senate was going late in session that evening. Yeah, I had a discussion with someone from the governor's office that is responsible for gaming and horse racing And I kind of expressed to her our difficulty as a commission trying to vet and make decisions on this stuff without having much statutory authority or at least clarity and criteria. So, I think that maybe the governor will become more aware that this is a place for him and the legislature to give us and other counties more clarity on. I think that's probably enough for now. So with that, I don't think there's anything else. So we will